Her first encounter with him left her shaken and aroused. Warning indicators blazed across the cockpit, crimson and amber pulses slicing through the gloom as Jace's freighter jolted violently. The inertial dampeners sputtered with a gut-twisting lurch, sending tools and data cards tumbling from their racks. Oxygen levels plummeted, the gauges dipping into the red. "Stay with me, old girl," Jace pleaded, his voice raw as he darted his hands over the battered control panel, slapping at switches and dials that refused to respond. The nav computer spat out strings of gibberish, error glyphs cascading across the cracked display. Pitch, yaw, even position, all gone haywire. This ship was built for cargo runs, not for scraping through a planet's atmosphere, and the hull screamed in protest as heat built along its skin. Through the forward viewport, a world unlisted on any star chart loomed up fast, a crimson wilderness unfurled beneath twin suns, its forests shimmering like waves of blood, and clusters of glassy towers jutting up, catching the sunlight in jagged, hypnotic patterns. Jace gritted his teeth, sweat stinging his eyes as he yanked hard on the yoke. The freighter shuddered, metal shrieking, a bulkhead strut tearing loose overhead. The spar spun past his head, missing by inches, and crashed into the nav console with a metallic clang. "Brace for impact," he muttered, knuckles white on the controls. The ship slammed down, skipping like a stone across the strange earth, thundering, skidding, the sound of tearing metal deafening. Steam billowed from ruptured pipes. The world whirled around Jace, vision swimming, his body hurled forward and back until the battered vessel finally ground to a shuddering halt. The cockpit filled with acrid smoke and dust. Jace's head struck the panel, a sharp flare of pain above his brow. He blinked, dazed, blood dripping down into his left eye. The world stilled. For a long moment, the only sound was the ticking of cooling metal and Jace's ragged breathing. He flexed his fingers, prodding his limbs one by one. Alive. Miraculously. A quick glance at the readouts confirmed his fears. Hull breach aft, power core dead, life support on emergency reserves. The ship was a tomb. Moving quickly, Jace grabbed the medkit, patching the cut above his eyebrow. The synth flesh stung, but the bleeding stopped. He swept through the ruined ship, gathering what he could: a battered pack filled with protein rations, a water purifier, his old toolkit, and a compact blaster, still humming with a faint blue charge. Slipping into his suit, he checked the readings. Atmosphere thin, but breathable. Gravity light, but not disorienting. The suit hissed as it sealed around his neck, filtering the tainted air. Jace forced open the hatch, the door groaning on warped hinges. A wave of heat and unfamiliar scents washed over him, metallic tang and something sharp, like spice. He climbed out, boots sinking into alien soil that shimmered with every shift of light. The plants were strange, their leaves glimmering with shifting patterns as if alive, reflecting the twin suns in fractured, mesmerizing colors. For a moment, he just stared, heart pounding, the reality of his situation finally sinking in. "Could be worse," he muttered under his breath, but the words rang hollow. Every nerve thrummed with tension. A flicker of motion at the forest's edge snapped him to attention. Something metallic, a glint darting between the crimson trees. Jace's hand went to his blaster, lifting it as he scanned the shifting shadows. "Anyone out there?" he called, his voice echoing across the clearing. A mistake, he realized instantly. The brush parted, rustling, and he braced himself. A figure stepped out from the trees, tall, slender, and unmistakably alien. Her skin gleamed a deep, luminous scarlet, catching the sunlight in subtle hues. Her pointed ears swept back, elegant and sharp as a blade, and her hair cascaded in a wave of crimson, almost blending with the foliage. Her suit fit close to her form, seams aglow with a gentle light, and a curious device was strapped to her wrist. A faint old scar traced her ribs, visible through a translucent panel of her clothing. She watched him with unblinking, vivid golden eyes, every movement measured and precise. Jace kept his blaster up, though his grip loosened as he felt no overt threat, only an intense curiosity radiating from her. They stood in silence, the air charged, both studying the other. He broke it first, lowering his weapon. "Can you understand me?" he asked quietly. She glanced at her wrist device, tapping a few controls. "Primitive craft," she replied at last, her voice melodic and tinged with an accent that hinted at unknown worlds. "You are not authorized here." Jace gestured at the wrecked ship behind him, forcing a wry smile. "I didn't mean to land. Something pulled me off course. I had no choice." Her eyes narrowed, gold irises almost glowing as she stepped closer. She examined him with clinical precision, her gaze flicking to his bleeding brow and the way he held his side. "You are human?" she asked, the word foreign on her tongue. "Yeah. Name's Jace, transport pilot. My ship crashed. I need help," he replied, his voice steady despite the adrenaline thundering in his chest. She began to circle him, eyes intense, taking in every detail. The air between them seemed to hum. Her fingers hovered near his chest, not quite touching. "You are wounded," she said softly. "It's nothing," Jace insisted, brushing away her concern with a half-hearted shrug. Her hand darted forward, fingertips grazing his skin, cool, almost electric, the touch sending an involuntary shiver through him. She withdrew just as quickly, her cheeks deepening in color, startled by the contact. Their eyes met, surprise, and something unspoken passing between them. "You must come," she said, voice urgent, motioning for him to follow her into the depths of the Scarlet Forest. "It is not safe here." Jace hesitated for only a heartbeat, glancing back at the ruined skeleton of his ship. Whatever waited among the blood-red trees and glassy towers, he had no choice but to trust the mysterious alien woman. He secured his pack, gripped his blaster, and stepped forward, following her into the unknown. She introduced herself as Lyra, her real name lilting and complex, but she softened it for him. "Lyra will suffice," she said, her accent curling delicately around the syllables. She moved with an effortless grace that belied the terrain, gliding ahead, her footsteps nearly silent against the alien soil. Jace found himself stumbling to keep pace, boots snagging on strange roots and glassy stones that caught the dying light. His head throbbed with every heartbeat, the adrenaline now fading, leaving only exhaustion and the dull ache above his brow. He cleared his throat, breaking the hush between them. "What do your people call this world?" he asked, eyes darting to the shifting red shadows. Lyra considered for a heartbeat, eyes narrowed in thought. "You might call it Virelia," she answered, her tone both careful and proud. "It is an old name. This place is not mapped, I think, by your kind." Virelia. Jace tasted the word, glanced around at the crystalline trees that refracted the twin suns' light, casting shifting mosaics across the ground. Scarlet vines hung from the branches, pulsing with some inner current, brushing his arms as he passed. There was a hum in the air, a living energy he could almost feel against his skin. "How far is it?" he asked, his voice rougher than he intended. Every step sent a fresh wave of discomfort up his spine. Lyra stopped abruptly, turning to study him with a clinical intensity. "You require treatment," she announced, not as a suggestion, but a fact. From a slender pouch at her hip, she retrieved a translucent patch threaded with iridescent veins. Before he could protest, she pressed it to his temple. Cool relief flooded the wound, pain dissolving, replaced by a tingling warmth. He blinked in surprise. What is that? Regenerative matrix, Lyra explained, fingers lingering for an extra moment before she withdrew. It will heal you. Temporarily adapted for your species. Thanks, Jace said, acutely aware of her nearness, the way her scent, rain and wild spice, clung to the air between them. He met her gaze, and she held it, her golden eyes shining with something unreadable. She tilted her head. Your kind is forbidden here, she said softly. Jace tensed, confusion flickering across his face. Why? Her expression darkened, and she glanced toward the thickening shadows. We must move. Night is dangerous, even for us. They pressed on, weaving deeper into the forest, Jace trusting Lyra's sure steps. The path grew steeper, roots forming natural stairs. The sun's lower rays set the crystalline trunks ablaze in color, but already the undergrowth grew cooler, the wind carrying a faint predatory whistle. Jace wondered what hunted here after dark, and why even someone as poised as Lyra wanted to avoid it. At last the trees parted, revealing a structure unlike anything Jace had seen, a dwelling that seemed to grow from the forest itself. Broad, spiraling columns rose from the earth, supporting curving walls of living wood and glassy veins that pulsed with gentle light. Fungal shelves glimmered along the edges, and the roof arched high, translucent, filtering the sunset into soft gold. My outpost, Lyra said, stepping forward and laying her palm against a panel. The surface rippled and parted, opening an entrance. It recognizes me. Jace followed her inside, eyes wide. The interior was softly lit by threads of bioluminescent moss and humming with a low, musical thrum, technology and nature intertwined. Hollow screens hovered above a workbench littered with alien instruments. A cluster of orbs floated in the center, slowly rotating, displaying shifting data in glyphs and images he couldn't decipher. You're a scientist? He ventured, curiosity overcoming caution. Lyra glanced at him over her shoulder as she moved to the central console, her expression softer. I study the balance of this world, alone, to avoid interference. She keyed something into her device, and the doors sealed with a quiet chime. Jace nodded, lowering his pack, exhaustion catching up to him. Do you have a way to contact my people? A distress signal, maybe? Lyra's hands hesitated in their work. For a long moment, only the hum of the machines filled the silence. Your presence is a problem, she said finally, turning to face him. This area is restricted. Our defense grid prevents unauthorized entry, even accidental ones. Jace let out a humorless laugh. So I'm stuck. She shook her head, her hair rippling like a banner of flame. Not stuck. But your return requires approval. There are rules and consequences for breaking them. He let that settle, the weight of his situation pressing in. Not exactly the welcome I hoped for. Lyra regarded him, her eyes unreadable. Then she moved to a cabinet, retrieving two bowls, one filled with a pale, translucent fruit, the other with clear water. Eat, she said, setting them before him. Safe for you. Jace eyed the food with suspicion. How do you know? She paused, hands hovering. We have observed your kind. From afar. Long before you arrived. He swallowed, the pieces starting to fit together. You've been watching us. For safety, she replied, her tone measured. Whose safety? He pressed, searching her face for a crack in the calm. Lyra hesitated, a faint shadow passing through her eyes. Both, she said, as if the answer were obvious, but her voice was quieter now. A tense silence filled the outpost. Jace reached for a piece of fruit, biting down. The taste was sweet, with an aftertaste of something sharp, unfamiliar, but pleasant. He tried a cautious smile. It's been a rough day, he said, attempting to break the chill in the air. Lyra's posture softened, her shoulders lowering just a fraction. She joined him at the table, her eyes flicking to his face, then away. The light in the room shifted, and for a moment, her cheeks deepened to a darker shade of scarlet. Jace set down the bowl, curiosity getting the better of him. "Your skin, it changes color?" She lifted a hand, brushing her cheek, embarrassment making her movements abrupt. "It is involuntary," she admitted, not quite meeting his gaze. He grinned, a real smile this time. "And that shade?" "It is not important," she said quickly, but there was a tremor in her voice that told him otherwise. Jace leaned back, studying her as she busied herself with a small device, but he didn't press further. The silence between them now was less tense, almost companionable, as if a bridge had begun to form. Lyra looked up at last. "Tomorrow, we recover what we can from your ship," she said, her tone all business again. "Then we decide what comes next. For both our sakes." Jace nodded, pushing away the memory of the crash and the ache of uncertainty for the first time since he'd fallen out of the sky. He watched Lyra as she moved through the softly lit space and wondered just how much his fate, and hers, had changed in the space of a single, impossible day. Morning broke in a wash of crimson and gold, light spilling through the canopy in molten ribbons. The air felt sharp, charged with the promise of movement and threat. Lyra was already awake, her silhouette crisp against the organic curve of the outpost's entrance as she prepared a slender pack and checked the charge on her wrist device. "We must salvage parts from your craft," she said, voice measured, businesslike. "Before predators come." Jace buckled his pack, still feeling the ache of yesterday's wounds, and glanced over. "Predators?" She met his gaze, gold eyes intent. "Large ones, drawn by new scents. The crash site will attract them soon." He swallowed, trying not to let unease show. The forest outside looked deceptively peaceful, the strange light making every scarlet leaf shimmer. But now he could almost sense the hidden dangers beneath the beauty. They set out quickly, boots crunching softly over glassy undergrowth. Lyra moved ahead, her stride sure and silent, scanning the path for tracks Jace could barely make out. As they neared the crash site, the air thickened with the tang of scorched metal and something more, an acrid undertone that seemed almost alive. Jace's ruined freighter sprawled across the clearing, hull twisted, compartments torn open like a wound. Dozens of insectoid scavengers crawled over the wreckage. Their bodies gleamed, all faceted armor and chitin, metallic blue and green, each the size of a small animal. "Hexabeetles," Lyra said, gesturing with a slight tilt of her chin. "Efficient. Dangerous if provoked." Jace shifted his grip on the blaster, ready to chase them off. But as he stepped forward, Lyra caught his arm. Her touch electric, a spark zinging between them. He froze, pulse leaping. "Careful," she murmured, holding his gaze. "They are aggressive in groups." He nodded, the brief contact lingering in his nerves. Lyra withdrew a small device from her belt, flicking it open with practiced ease. She aimed it at the swarm and triggered a pulse. A low hum filled the air, vibrating in Jace's chest. The beetles recoiled, their mandibles clacking, then scattered into the shadows with a metallic hiss. They moved to the freighter, picking through the debris. Jace pried open a panel, retrieving the communications relay, while Lyra scanned the remains with her device, collecting fragments that glowed and pulsed in her palm. Lyra's questions came quick, sharp, each one probing deeper into his ship's tech. "What is the function of this module?" she asked, holding up a fused power cell. "Is this the primary interface, or is it for redundancy?" Jace grinned despite himself. "You learn fast. That one's backup, in case the main array fries." Which, I guess it did. She smiled, a quick flash of warmth, then resumed her work. The sun climbed higher, sweat beading along Jace's brow as they gathered what they could. He felt her curiosity, a hunger for knowledge that matched his own, and it drew him closer in ways he hadn't expected. Suddenly, the air split with a roar, deeper than thunder, primal and violent. The ground vibrated underfoot. From the shadows, a massive beast exploded into the clearing. It towered over them, easily twice Jace's height, its body supported by 6 powerful legs that pounded the earth with every stride. Its hide was armored, plates shining like burnished iron, claws long as daggers. A cluster of eyes glittered above a mouth bristling with serrated teeth. Lyra hissed, shifting her stance. Varaxian stalker, deadly. The creature's gaze fixed on them. With a guttural snarl, it charged, the ground shaking with each impact. Jace barely had time to react. He shoved Lyra aside, drawing his blaster and firing in quick succession. The shot sparked harmlessly off its armored hide, blue-white bursts scattering across its scales. Lyra activated her wrist device. A translucent barrier sprang up between them and the beast, shimmering as the stalker slammed into it with bone-rattling force. The shield flickered, strained under the assault. "The barrier won't last!" Lyra shouted, her voice tight with urgency. Jace's eyes darted across the wreckage. He spotted a jagged piece of hull, torn free in the crash, a splinter of alloy, wickedly sharp. As the stalker reeled for another attack, Jace grabbed the fragment and waited for the moment the shield faltered. The beast lunged. The barrier flickered and died. Jace sprang forward, all instinct and desperation, driving the shard straight into the creature's largest eye. It shrieked, a sound that stabbed through bone, and crashed to the ground, convulsing before it finally lay still. Silence followed, broken only by Jace's ragged breathing. He staggered back, blood pounding in his ears. Lyra rushed to his side, her golden eyes wide, shining with something fierce and unfamiliar. "You protected me," she whispered, voice raw. Jace managed a crooked smile. "You would have done the same for me." She stared at him for a heartbeat longer, her hand brushing his arm, the contact sending another jolt through him. Then she gathered her composure, and together they worked quickly, hauling the salvaged parts back through the forest. Every shadow seemed sharper now, every sound loaded with possibility. By the time they reached the outpost, night had begun to fall. The sky boiled with storm clouds, lightning clawing at the horizon. As the first drop spattered the canopy, thunder cracked overhead, and wind battered the living walls of Lyra's dwelling. Inside, Jace stood by the softly pulsing wall, watching the storm's wild dance through the translucent roof. He felt Lyra's presence behind him, almost as vivid as the charge in the air. She spoke quietly, her words nearly lost in the wind. "Do your people form bonds? Emotional connections?" He turned, catching her gaze in the flickering blue light of lightning. "Yes," he answered. "Don't yours?" She hesitated, her features shadowed, luminous. "Not like yours. We are taught to guard ourselves. Bonds, true ones, are rare and complicated." Their eyes met across the small space, each waiting for the other to look away. But neither did. The air between them felt charged, alive with the same electricity as the storm. The days that followed blurred together in a rhythm of labor and discovery. Jace and Lyra worked side by side, assembling a makeshift communications device from the scavenged tech. At first, their movements were careful, marked by a mutual caution, but as time passed, that caution faded. Each accidental touch sent sparks skittering along Jace's nerves. He saw it affected Lyra, too, the way her breath caught, the deepening glow of her cheeks. They shared stories in the evenings, their laughter mingling with the hush of the forest beyond the walls. Lyra's reserve began to crack, curiosity giving way to something softer. She taught Jace fragments of her language. He showed her how to splice a human data core to a Varelian interface. The distance between them shrank. One afternoon, sunlight streaming through the living roof, their hands brushed as they fitted a memory crystal into the device. The contact was electric, an unmistakable jolt that left Jace breathless. Lyra gasped, pulling her hand away, her cheeks a deep, molten red. She stepped back, crossing her arms as if to contain the trembling in her fingers. "It is a physical reaction," she said, voice tight. "It means nothing." Jace shook his head, stepping closer, his own heart thundering. "It happens every time we're close. What does it mean?" She looked away, her posture rigid. "Among my kind, this resonance is rare. It should not happen between different species. It is unheard of." "So what does it mean?" Jace pressed, soft but insistent. She drew a shaky breath. "It means profound compatibility, a bond, deeper than logic or science." Jace's voice was gentle but sure. "I feel it too. Every time." Lyra nodded, her eyes shimmering. "It is forbidden, but it is real." Jace's frustration simmered just beneath his skin as he worked, hands moving through the motions of repair while his mind circled the same bitter truth. Every wire he stripped, every circuit he adjusted was a futile attempt to shake the knowledge that he and his entire species had been watched, observed and catalogued from afar, never knowing. The comm device on the table flickered with pale blue light, the only witness to his silence. Lyra sat across from him, her presence quieter than usual, her skin a muted shade between scarlet and gray. She watched him carefully, her golden eyes soft but searching. "You are angry," she said, her voice gentle but certain. Jace set down his tool, exhaling hard. "Wouldn't you be? Knowing you're just a test subject? Watched for years and no one bothered to say a word." Lyra shook her head, her features drawn in earnest concern. "Not test subject, no interference, no harm. Only observation." He leaned over the table, voice taut. "That's not much better. It's like living your whole life under a microscope." She looked away, her hands twisting together in her lap. "It is precaution. For your safety and ours." Jace forced himself to calm, fingers drumming against the metal surface. "What happens now?" "You broke your rules, Lyra. You've done more than just watch." She met his gaze, and her expression was stark, resigned. "They will recall me, erase my memories of you. Standard procedure." Jace's jaw tightened, anger turning to dread. "I won't let them." The words escaped before he could filter them, raw and desperate. She shook her head slowly. "You can't stop it, Jace. I could have called for extraction at any time. I still could." He stared at her, heart pounding. "Then why didn't you?" For the first time, her cheeks flushed with that deep, beautiful red, and her voice came out small but resolute. "I wanted more time to understand this bond." "It defies everything we know." A bitter laugh escaped him. "So I'm just a research specimen with interesting results?" She recoiled, shaking her head fiercely. "No, you are something else. I don't have a word for it." Her hand trembled as she pressed it to her chest. Before he could answer, the ground shuddered, a deep rumble rising beneath their feet. Tools rattled off the table, lights flickered, and a harsh, splintering crack ran through the floor. In the next instant, the outpost split down the center, walls buckling, part of the structure lurching away. Jace lunged, grabbing Lyra's arm and pulling her to the side as the floor gave way. They tumbled together onto a patch of moss and glassy stone, the rest of the outpost groaning as it crumbled. Dust filled the air, and for a moment, the world narrowed to the sound of their breathing and the heat of her body pressed against his. He ran his hands over her shoulders and sides, frantic. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, voice barely a whisper. "No. You saved me. Again." Their faces hovered inches apart, her breath soft on his cheek. Jace hesitated, searching her eyes for hesitation. "May I?" he asked, his voice low. Lyra's gaze dropped to his lips, then back to his eyes. She nodded, unable to find her words. His fingers traced the curve of her scar, feather-light. She shivered, her skin rippling with shifting hues: rose, violet, and molten gold. "If my people find out, they'll separate us," she whispered, the words trembling in the air. Jace's voice was steady, fierce. "Is that what you want?" She closed her eyes, the colors deepening along her jaw and throat. "No. What I feel is not contamination. It is awakening." He let his forehead rest gently against hers, breath mingling with hers, letting the silence speak what words could not. By morning, they worked to repair the battered outpost. The structure still stood, but cracks webbed across the walls and the life support core pulsed weakly, flickering in and out. Lyra crouched beside the failing interface, her brow furrowed in concern. "It is failing," she said quietly. "The oxygen scrubbers are damaged, and the core cannot hold a charge." Jace wiped sweat from his brow. "How long do we have?" She hesitated, running calculations. "Hours, maybe less. There's a thermal pool nearby, a geothermal spring. It will keep us warm while we find a solution." He nodded, grabbing the emergency kit and slinging it over his shoulder. As Lyra packed, Jace watched her set aside her communicator on the table, not even glancing at it. He frowned, gesturing to the device. "You're not bringing it?" She paused, then shook her head. "No." Jace arched an eyebrow. "Isn't that dangerous?" She smiled faintly. "Not as dangerous as calling them now." They stepped out into the morning, the forest alive with birdsong and the whisper of wind through crystalline leaves. Lyra led, her stride brisk but not hurried, her face calm. Jace fell in beside her, questions burning in his mind. He broke the silence. "Is your society strict?" She nodded, eyes fixed on the winding path. "My people value order above all. Choices are few. Purpose is clear. Each life is assigned, directed." "And your purpose?" Lyra's steps slowed. "To observe, to learn, but never interfere. Until you." He let her words linger, watching the tension in her shoulders. The flicker of doubt and hope mingled in her eyes. They reached the spring as the sun climbed high, steam rising from the water in shimmering veils. Lyra stopped at the edge, arms crossed, uncertain. Jace slipped off his boots and stepped into the warm water, sighing as the heat wrapped around him. He looked back at her, hand extended. "Will you join me?" She hesitated, her gaze fixed on the swirling surface. "It is not proper. Because of what I feel." He moved closer, water lapping at his waist. "And what is that, Lyra?" She met his eyes, her defenses thin as silk. Longing and fear warred in her golden gaze. Jace reached for her, fingers brushing the elegant line of her pointed ear. She gasped, shivering as his touch sent a visible ripple of color racing across her skin. "No one has ever—" Her voice faltered, breathless. He searched her face for any sign of reluctance. "Should I stop?" She shook her head, voice trembling but sure. "No." Jace cupped her face in his hands, drawing her closer. She leaned in, her lips finding his, tentative at first, then hungry, urgent. A surge of energy passed between them, their hearts thundering in unison, her skin glowing brighter with every heartbeat. When they parted, both were breathless, suspended in a moment outside of time. The world faded, leaving only the two of them, adrift in possibility. Jace traced her cheek, his voice a whisper. "What now?" Lyra smiled, radiant and unguarded. "Now we choose our own fate." With a shared, silent promise, they slipped into the pool together, surrendering to the current that had drawn them together from the very start, finding solace and belonging beneath alien skies, where for the first time every choice and every heartbeat was truly their own. 3 days passed in a blur of discovery and closeness. Jace and Lyra moved through the hours as if in a waking dream, exploring both the wild corners of Veralia and the depths of each other. They wove stories under scarlet-leafed canopies, shared dreams while the twin suns dipped low, and mapped out futures that once seemed impossible. Lyra taught Jace to read the shifting patterns of the forest, and he showed her the constellations of Earth, drawn in the dirt with his finger, names whispered like secrets. Each night, they slept curled together, the world beyond the outpost fading into irrelevance. But on the fourth morning, the spell shattered. Lyra bolted upright as the first light bled through the roof. Her eyes were wide, golden, and sharp with worry. "Signals. My people. They're coming," she whispered, voice tight with dread. Jace sat up, his pulse spiking. "How? We've been careful. You said—" She was already checking her wrist device, scanning glyphs that pulsed with urgency. "If I stop reporting for more than 3 cycles, they send a retrieval team. It is protocol. We have little time." They packed quickly, the movements practiced now but laced with tension. Jace threw essentials into his bag while Lyra shut down her equipment, hands shaking. He paused, catching her eye. "What will they do when they find us?" Lyra hesitated, her expression haunted. "They'll separate us. Say I've been compromised. That I am no longer fit to observe." He zipped his pack shut, anger rising. "And what do you think, Lyra?" She glanced at him, defiant. "They're wrong. What we have, it changes everything I've been taught. It's not contamination. It's evolution." They left the outpost, moving through the forest at a run. Dew clung to Jace's boots, and his breath fogged in the cool morning air. The crash site loomed ahead, scorched and silent, the freighter's bones stripped bare. Jace knelt by the communications device, reconnecting wires with practiced hands while Lyra stood guard, eyes on the flickering signal interface. He worked quickly, fingers nimble despite the tremor in his chest. "What will they do to me?" he asked, keeping his voice low. Lyra's response was bleak. "Study you. Return you to your people, memories erased. It is how they keep secrets. And you? Reassignment, rehabilitation. My memories of you, of this, would be erased as well. I would be changed." Jace's jaw clenched. He powered up the device, the screen glowing to life. "It's working. I can call for help." But even as he spoke, the hum of engines split the air. A Varelian shuttle shimmered into view above the treetops, its hull refracting the light in liquid ripples. 3 figures descended on a gravity wave, their forms elongated and draped in deep blue robes, faces masked by gleaming helms. Lyra stepped back, pulling Jace behind her as the lead Varelian, Overseer Karin, strode forward. Karin's gaze was cold, his voice colder still. "You have violated directives, Researcher Lyra." Jace stepped to Lyra's side, defiant. "She saved my life. If you're here to punish someone, start with me." Karin ignored him, focusing on Lyra. "The human will be detained. You are compromised." Lyra squared her shoulders, stepping between Jace and the Varelians. "He is innocent. He would have died without my intervention." Another Varelian, slighter but no less imposing, scanned them both with a device that hummed and flickered. "Your judgment is impaired. Bonding has occurred. The evidence is clear." Lyra's chin lifted, eyes blazing. "It's more than that. We are compatible in ways your data cannot explain." "Irrelevant," Karin snapped. "Protocol is clear." "The human returns to his kind, memories erased. You will be reassigned and treated." Lyra's hand found Jace's, fingers entwining tightly. She refused to let go, her entire body trembling with fury and fear. If you take him, you take me too. I will not comply. Not anymore. Karin's features darkened. You would choose exile for a human? Lyra nodded, her voice fierce. I choose truth. Before another word could be spoken, a deep rumble echoed across the clearing. Another craft appeared overhead, angular and gray. Human technology, bristling with antennas and thrusters. The rescue beacon had worked. The ship settled, a ramp lowering with a hiss, and Commander Reyes strode out, boots crunching on alien soil. She took in the scene with a single sharp glance. My pilot comes with me, Reyes said, her voice steel. Karin bristled. Your presence is a violation of Varelian sovereign territory. Reyes's mouth twisted in a cold smile. These borders aren't on any of our maps. You want to claim this world, you file a grievance. Until then, he's mine. Jay stepped forward, heart pounding. Commander, these are Varelians. They've been watching Earth for years, studying us without our knowledge. Reyes's jaw tightened, her gaze flickering to Lyra and back to Karin. That's not observation. That's surveillance. And now you want to erase one of my crew's mind? It's complicated, Jay said quickly, glancing at Lyra, who squeezed his hand in reassurance. But Lyra saved me. She's risking everything, standing up to them. Karin's eyes narrowed. Researcher Lyra's judgment cannot be trusted. She is compromised by her attachment. Lyra met his stare, unyielding. My perspective has grown. What I've learned cannot be gleaned from a distance. The connection I share with Jace, what we have, proves there's more to understand than protocol. Commander Reyes hesitated, then looked between Jace and Lyra, her tone gentler. What have you experienced, Lyra? Lyra's cheeks flushed a brilliant red, her voice trembling. Connection. Understanding. Unity. A bond neither of our species believed possible. The slighter Varelian spoke up, scanning data from their wrist. They have formed a pair bond. A biological anomaly, yet confirmed by the resonance scans. Reyes nodded slowly, weighing her words. I propose a compromise. I take my pilot and his companion. You report to your council and let them decide how to proceed. Unacceptable. Karin spat, his patience fraying. You cannot dictate Varelian affairs. Reyes's hand drifted to her sidearm. Then we have a standoff. Are you prepared for that? Tension crackled in the clearing, everyone frozen. Jace felt Lyra trembling beside him, saw the anguish in her eyes. He turned to her, voice low and urgent. What if I go with them, to present our case directly? If you invoke Protocol 9, they have to let us speak to the council. I'll be your evidence, Lyra. Living proof. She shook her head, fear and hope colliding. It's too risky, Jace. If they separate us... He squeezed her hand. I trust you. If we don't try, it's over anyway. After a long moment, Karin relented, his posture stiff. The human may accompany us. Commander Reyes must depart, reporting only through official channels. No interference. Reyes shot a look at Jace. You sure about this? Jace nodded. It's the only way. Reyes agreed with conditions. Her ship would remain in orbit, awaiting word. As the deal was struck, Jace pulled Lyra aside, away from the others. They stood together at the edge of the trees, the forest alive with the hush of imminent change. Are you sure about this? Jace asked, searching her face for any hint of doubt. Lyra touched his face, her fingers lingering, a spark leaping between them. I have never been more certain. I choose this, Jace, even if it means exile, even if it means leaving everything behind. Jace's eyes shone with fierce resolve. Then I'm with you, no matter what comes next. Their hands clasped tight, the world narrowed to just the two of them. united in the face of the unknown. Commander Reyes's voice echoed over the comm, crisp and unmistakable even through the static that sometimes plagued transmissions in Varelian airspace. Lyra, Jace, confirm readiness for council departure. Lyra stood at the edge of the clearing, the forest behind them still trembling from the events of the morning. She turned to Jace, her expression clear, fearless in the face of the unknown. I am ready, but our arrival will not be easy. Her voice was low, but it resonated with something unbreakable. Jace nodded, meeting her gaze. His resolve had been forged in chaos, in every hard landing and desperate gamble he had ever made. We'll face it together, he said, the promise unspoken between their joined hands. The Varelian shuttle shimmered nearby, light bending along its hull as Karin stepped forward. The overseer's bearing was rigid, each word measured and heavy with authority. Protocol 9 invoked, but your testimony is compromised, he intoned, gaze fixed on Lyra and then flicking to Jace. The council's word is final. There will be no deviation once judgment is delivered. Jace squared his shoulders, feeling the weight of history pressing in. Protocol or not, what we share is real, he said, voice steady. I come from chaos. My world is built on change and chance. But I know love, and I know what it means to risk everything for it. Isn't that worth considering? Karin's eyes narrowed, the metallic sheen of his gaze reflecting only the cold logic of his people. Your emotion is noted, but deviation must be corrected. Standard procedure is memory adjustment and separation, for the safety of both our species. Lyra stepped forward, her skin shimmering with defiance, a living ripple of light and color. I will not let them erase what we found, she said, her words cutting through the tension. This bond is not contamination, it is hope. I am a paradox that demands a new answer. Reyes moved between the two factions, her voice calm but commanding. This is a chance for dialogue, not just judgment. I propose a stay on memory adjustment until a proper hearing can be conducted. If there is even a chance for understanding between our peoples, it begins here. A murmur rose among the Varelians gathered near the shuttle, their features shadowed by uncertainty. Karin hesitated, fingers tightening on his ceremonial staff. A stay is unusual, he conceded at last, but Protocol 9 allows testimony. Very well. You will have your hearing. Any disobedience will be punished in accordance with Varelian law. The air seemed to shift, possibility opening like a door. Jace turned to Lyra, their silent vow echoing in the space between heartbeats. He reached for her hand, drawing strength from the certainty in her touch. I may be human, but I stand for more than you think, Jace said, his voice carrying across the clearing. I stand for the idea that connection, true connection, is not weakness. It's what makes us more than the sum of our rules. Lyra's skin shimmered with iridescent light. She raised her chin, speaking not just to Karin, but to all who watched. Today I offer my truth, a connection that bridges not just species, but hearts. Progress must embrace difference, not fear it. Commander Reyes nodded, her gaze sweeping across the assembly. This moment will shape the future of our worlds, whether by fear or by hope. The Varelian shuttle's ramp lowered with a hiss. Jace and Lyra moved as one, stepping onto the polished surface, anticipation thick in the air. Lyra leaned close, her lips brushing Jace's ear as the world behind them receded. Every moment with you makes the risk worthwhile, she whispered. Even if I am cast out, our bond is real. Jace squeezed her hand, their fingers interlaced as the shuttle's doors sealed. We'll show them love isn't a flaw, it's the key to something greater. Inside the shuttle, silence hung heavy at first. The Varelian sat opposite, Karin in the center, his expression unreadable. Lyra kept her chin high, the colors shifting along her skin in subtle waves of rose and gold. Jace could feel her pulse through their joined hands, fast but steady. Outside, the forest fell away as the shuttle rose. The viewports filled with shifting clouds and streaks of alien light, the planet shrinking below. Jace glanced at the council's envoys, at Reyes's determined silhouette visible from the ground, and then back at Lyra, whose courage anchored him in the moment. Karin finally spoke, his tone formal and absolute. You will present your case before the High Council. If your testimony is found lacking, standard corrective measures will be enforced. Lyra answered calmly. We understand. Jace's thoughts churned with memories of the crash, of Lyra's first touch, of every moment where logic demanded they part ways and love had held them together. He found himself hoping that the Council, for all their rules, might recognize the strength in what he and Lyra had built. The shuttle pierced the cloud layer, city lights sparkling below, Virelia's capital, a city of crystalline towers and woven bridges, alive with the pulse of a civilization that prized order above all. They descended onto a broad landing platform flanked by honor guards in blue and silver. As the doors opened, Lyra took a deep breath. No matter what happens, Jace, you have changed me, my purpose, my world. He smiled, brushing his thumb over her knuckles. And you've changed mine. I never believed the universe could surprise me anymore. They stepped out together, the world watching. Guards escorted them through grand halls of light and glass, each step echoing with the weight of tradition and the promise of rebellion. They stood side by side before massive doors that led to the council chamber, the hush of anticipation nearly deafening. Jace glanced at Lyra, his nerves steadied by the pride in her gaze. Ready? He asked, voice low. Ready, she replied, her eyes shining. We face this together. The doors opened, light spilling onto them. The council chamber waited, ancient, imposing, filled with the gathered wisdom and suspicion of generations. Jace and Lyra entered, hands joined, their bond a beacon against the shadows of the past. As they walked forward, Lyra whispered one last time, voice trembling with hope and conviction. Whatever verdict they render, I have found my truth in you. Jace squeezed her hand, heart swelling with resolve. We'll show them what's possible. We'll forge a new path. Together. And as the council's gaze fell upon them, united by a forbidden bond, Jace and Lyra stood tall, ready to challenge ancient laws, to speak for connection, and to prove that love, not fear, was the bridge that could carry them beyond the stars. That's the end of the story. Please do not forget to subscribe to our channel, like the video, and write in the comments what you liked most about this story. Our team will be very grateful to you. You can find even more fascinating stories on our channel. See you in the next video.